Right on cue, my phone rings right as the Pewter Report podcast is starting. I just want to let everybody know that Scam Likely is not welcome on the podcast. I don't know, Matt. I've got a new thing, new carrier, and now when I get these crazy bogus calls, it says Scam Likely. So anyway, I'm not going to get scammed today, hopefully. Thank you very much, T-Mobile or whoever you are, Sprint. This is live podcasting. This is what happens when you're not professional like myself and you don't turn your phone off right before the podcast starts. Anyway, welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. I am Mark Cook. No, I'm not John Ledyard. We know I'm not Scott Reynolds. I'm not even Taylor Jenkins, but I'm Mark Cook, along with my good friend and colleague, the esteemed Mr. Matthew Matera. Matt, how are you?
Hello, sir. I am doing well. It's great to be talking with you. We've both been on the podcast a lot recently, but not together. Right. So it's nice that we're doing a joint podcast again.
Yeah, here comes a real podcast. We're going to have some real fun. You know what I mean? Not with the fuddy-duddies, Scott and John. You know, they're all strict.
None of that.
No Wolverine talk. We're going to talk Sopranos. We're going to talk some Mets baseball.
14
like
runs
that.
Last night.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. Actually, we're probably not going to talk any of that stuff. No. But as Matt said, not a lot of nerd talk, unless you're a Buccaneer nerd, which we all kind of are. If you're watching this podcast, you're kind of a Buccaneer nerd, but that's okay because we're nerds as well. Matthew Sam says, hey, and ... So I don't know what he was going to say after that, but hello, Matthew Sams. We've got several people in the podcast right now watching. And of course, Matt, we always start off the podcast talking about our good friends and our terrific sponsor, Celsius.
That's right.
Matt's got his Celsius. What fella? That looks like what flavor? You got a kiwi in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's the kiwi guava.
How is the kiwi guava?
I like it. I would put it in my top 5. My favorite is the blueberry pomegranate. That one is great. But the kiwi guava,
that is good.
It does what it's supposed to do. It gets you ready. It gets you going. And it's funny. I was telling this story on the podcast the other day. I'll say it really quick. I had a friend over, and we were watching the PGA Championship 2 weeks ago. And he works at a bar close by, so he was going to watch the beginning of it, and then he had to go to work. And golf, it's a little slow. You watch it on a Sunday afternoon. You get a little tired. So he's like a little sleepy. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be ready for work. And he goes, hey, you got that Celsius? I'm like, do I have that Celsius? You bet
you have
I
it.
do.
Of course you have it.
Yeah.
Celsius is great. Listen, whether, I know people that are using it first thing in the morning. They've replaced coffee with Celsius. I know people that use it as a pre-workout drink. I know people that take it at night that work different shifts and things like that to keep them awake. Again, the great thing about Celsius is you're not going to get that sugar crash. I mean, we've all done different energy things. I remember back in the day, I'm taking caffeine pills back in the 80s, right, to stay awake when I had to study and things like that. No more of that. Celsius doesn't have things in it like that. But most importantly, it doesn't have the sugar. I mean, soda, listen, I was a big soda drinker before Celsius came along. But now with Celsius, I don't remember the last time I had a soda. I don't need a soda. I get the flavor, the beverage that I want, without that sugar high. And somebody like me who has to check his blood sugar and check it often, Matt, I don't need the Celsius. So I'm definitely been using the Celsius as a replacement for soda. And we've heard of a lot of people doing that. The great thing about Celsius is you can find it, and it's becoming more and more widespread. You can find Celsius at your neighborhood grocery store in most places. You can find it at convenience stores. I was at Wawa the other day. I was at 7-Eleven. I noticed Celsius. I was at Publix. I've seen Celsius. It's funny, now that you drink Celsius, you start noticing it more and more, and it's popping up everywhere. But if you'd like to get more information on Celsius, you can go to Celsius.com. Purchase, click the Celsius ads on pewterreport.com as well. And you can also find out what flavors you like. One of the good things to do, Matt, that I tell people, get the variety pack. It's hard to say, look, you like the blueberry pomegranate. I'm a guava guy. I really like the sparkling orange as well. But if you don't know, no need to get 12 or 24 cans of a soda of a flavor that you may not like. So buy the variety pack, decide which one you like, and then you can always just go from there and continue to order. So anyway, we want to thank Celsius for being the title sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Now, Matt, you and I were both out at One Buccaneer Place today, aka the Advent Health Training Center. And It was a warm day. I know no one really cares about this, but we got there a little before 10 o'clock. It was, by the way, let's just paint the picture for everybody. This was not a normal, and I think I called it an OTA. It was a mini camp practice. It was not a normal mini camp practice. It was, as you wrote in the practice report, essentially a Friday practice, right? On Fridays, the team is basically doing some walkthroughs, some small little individual periods, and it's a short practice. And that's what we saw today. Look, these guys had one foot out the door already because they know they've got a nice 6-week vacation coming up. So it doesn't mean they didn't work hard for that hour. Bruce Arians was pleased in what he saw today, but it was a shorter practice. There wasn't a whole lot of team 11 on 11 stuff like that. There were some 7-on-7 drills, but it was a lot different than we've seen the last couple of days. Now, you were out there yesterday as well. So, but would you agree? I mean, this was not your typical a mandatory or mini camp type practice that we saw today.
Yeah, like I said, it was essentially a glorified walkthrough. And I mean, players didn't even have their helmets on until halfway through the practice. So that's how you know. And granted, they were taking mental reps, I guess would be the best way to say it. You know, they were going through different formations and how to react to certain situations. So they were taking practice seriously. There just wasn't a lot of running or any really type of moving going on. And the funny thing, too, is I will say once they started running drills and doing they did a lot of red zone and goal line, the intensity really went up. You know, they brought it when they were playing. The only problem is the majority of that red zone, and actually all of it, was down on the opposite end of the field from where the media is.
They love to do that to us, Matt.
What's up?
Right.
Yeah, and then on top of that,
they love to do that to us. They love to stick us as far away as possible, for sure.
And then you have the players that aren't in on the rep. They're all standing behind the quarterback, pretty much making it like a wall almost. Right. So it's very tough to see like who's in on what specific play. So you'd see a touchdown, and I'm like on my tippy toes trying to like crouch through Tom Brady and like someone else to see like, oh, was that Trask throwing it? Was it Griffin who was throwing? But in that area, I think we did see a lot of interesting stuff. And then eventually they went to 11-on-11s and they came more towards our way. So we were able to see more things.
Yeah, a little bit more there because the players moved out of the way mainly. But you're right. Again, let's paint a picture for people. If you've been to One Buccaneer Place, they would have been on the east field, the farthest east field, and they would have been in the end zone back towards the building. And the media would be at the far end of that east end zone. So we were literally 100 yards away from the action, looking back towards the building. There's a pond back there. We're basically standing in front of that fence where the pond is. So again, it wasn't easy to look. I was really mad, Matt. I grabbed my bag as I was leaving. I grabbed my backpack, take off, get to One Buck Place, go through the check-in. We still have to do the medical check-in deal and the health questionnaire. We go out to the field. I get set up. I get ready to go. Looking in my bag, my binoculars are not there. Well, for a guy that's half blind already, that's not a good thing. 100 yards away, looking in the bright sunshine without my binoculars. So thank goodness you were the eyes of Pewter Report for the most part today. And you've got a practice report that we've got it up now. Did you publish it?
Just got to put it in an image.
Okay, actually, you're going to put it in. Yeah, you're going to do that. And people can read everything that happened today in the shorter abbreviated of the practice today. But we're going to go over some specific things that we saw during that practice today. One of the things that I think have people excited was the return of Jaelon Darden, and he was out. He tell us what happened yesterday, and talk about his return today, Matt.
Yeah, so I was there on Tuesday, but on Wednesday he didn't practice at all on Tuesday, and Bruce Arians said after that he had tweaked a hamstring. So Wednesday he warmed up with the team, but he didn't do any reps, didn't do any of the the strenuous work that went on. But originally, as I said, Arians predicted that Darden would be back for Thursday, and he was there on Thursday, which was really good to see. And even though we said it was mostly a walkthrough, he did participate in full, which was really good to see. I thought another thing that was interesting too, and we've talked about it previously on the podcast as well, is that when Darden comes back, we weren't sure if he was going to be working with the 1s and 2s or the 3s and 4s because they've kind of split that up.
Right.
Because Jaden Mickens had been participating more with the 1s and 2s, but would he get bumped down? That wasn't really the case for when Darden returned today. He was mostly working with Ryan Griffin and Kyle Trask as his quarterbacks. He did get a couple of reps in with the 1s and 2s during that goal line session, and Brady did throw him the ball. Unfortunately, it was an incomplete pass. Again, it was too far down the way. I'm not going to say it was Darden's fault or it was Brady's fault.
We're going to blame Darden. We're not going to blame Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time.
They did go. He did participate with both quarterback or both, teams, I guess you could say.
Right.
Which was an important sign. And I was saying this the other day too. And I was telling John this, but I think you would understand it more because you were there with us. The Bucs, the past couple of training camps, have had an issue with their rookies coming in and missing training camp because of a hamstring injury. And you see it really hurt their development. Scotty Miller and Anthony Nelson both 2 years ago had that issue. And then Tyler Johnson last season as well. Sure. And Scotty would be one of the first guys to tell you that it definitely messed with him learning about playing in the NFL. So I hope that doesn't happen with Darden. It was good that he was back today. Now he's going to have a ton of time to rest that injury. Granted, their other injuries were in training camp, so it's a little bit different. But, it's something that I think we should at least pay a little bit of attention to when training camp comes around.
Yeah. And I asked Bruce today if they suffered really any injuries at all during the 3-day minicamp, because we've seen across the NFL, I think it was the 49ers that have lost a couple offensive linemen to the season-ending injuries during their OTAs and minicamp. I don't remember which it was, but and so they went ahead and canceled the rest of, actually, I believe they suffered those injuries in OTAs and then canceled minicamp. The Houston Texans have done the same thing. And, I asked Bruce about that, and really they didn't have anything. He said that today that Jamel Dean might have slightly sprained his knee, and then he quickly said bruised his knee. It doesn't seem to be anything serious there, which is good. I mean, you just want to get through these 3 days as unscathed as possible, because in training camp the injuries are going to pop up because it's long and it's difficult, it's tiring, those kind of things, and there'll be injuries in the preseason, of course, in the regular season. But boy, you sure don't want to lose anybody for a significant amount of time in a mini camp, which again, Bruce Arians said it today, it's important. We need these reps. We need to be on the field together. We need these guys working together. We can't just go out there and win football games. Although I wanted to say when he said that today, Matt, well, you did last year. It worked out pretty good because you didn't have anything last year, including preseason. So, but I see what he's saying. I mean, he wants his guys out there. But again, you just want to get through this thing. I think that's the number one thing you want to accomplish in these mini camps and OTAs is just to keep guys as healthy as possible. And they did have a safety. What's his name? Curtis Riley yesterday, number 39. I asked Bruce about him. He has a slight Achilles tear, Bruce said. I don't know what that means. Anytime your Achilles gets torn, whether slightly or unslightly or very difficultly or whatever the right word is not a good thing. He's a guy that when I did the story yesterday on his injury, I didn't realize he had been in the league since 2015. I mean, this isn't a rookie coming into it. And this guy had 4 interceptions with the Giants back in 2018, I think it was. Has 5 career interceptions. So I don't know that he was going to make the football team. I don't know if, he was certainly going to be a depth guy. He wasn't going to break into the starting lineup. But I hate the fact that he had that Achilles injury. The good news is he's got time to rest it, to maybe repair it, but they don't know if it needs surgery yet. But, again, knock on wood. Well, there's no knocking on wood now because it's over. But fortunately, thank goodness for the team and for the organization, they didn't really suffer any major injuries. Garrett Washington says, Leftwich recently said Darden reminds him of a young AB. Does that slightly worry anybody else? I'll answer first. It doesn't worry me. I mean, I think it's I think it's great, encouraging words for a guy like Jaelon Darden to have your coach say that. You know what I mean? It may be a pump up kind of thing. Listen, he's got a lot to prove. I mean, a couple of rookie minicamp practices, 2 OTAs, and 3 practices during minicamp is not going to put him in the league of Antonio Brown. That's just, not even fair to the kid to do that comparison, to be honest with you. But maybe it's just hey, let's pump up this kid a little bit. I guess maybe they see some of the similarities in his ability to stop, cut, move, lateral movements and things like that after he catches the ball, unlike a guy like Scotty Miller, who's a straight speed guy, right? He's going to go north-south as fast as possible. Darden's a speed guy, probably not quite as fast, straight line speed as as Scotty Miller, but what he does have is that ability to move laterally after you catch the ball, to stop and start, to be
Yeah.
the R1X on PlayStation, on your Madden game or whatever it is, where you make these insane moves and things like that. But again, he's got so much to prove, but he will be a very fun guy, in my opinion, Matt, to watch when training camp rolls around in late July.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as on the field, there wouldn't be anything you would want to worry about him getting compared to Antonio Brown. It's like off the field stuff that you don't want a comparison to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, definitely not that. No.
But Darden is an interesting player because he's I think he's most similar to Brown in the way that he's able to make people miss, and that's pretty much what you alluded to when you're talking about that right there. And both Darden and Brown are similar hybrid receivers, specifically for this Bucs offense, where it's like, okay, you got Mike Evans lined up outside, Scotty Miller's role, he's going to line up outside and go deep, and you have Chris Godwin in the slot, he can go over the middle. Brown and Darden are players that can do both. We've seen Brown be the number one guy in like the Steelers offense, but he had to adjust to a role coming to the Bucs, and he played more towards the inside as well if they asked him to do that. I see Darden being that similar type of role where he will line up if that's what the play calls for, but they'll also move him into the middle. And I also think, too, Darden can really be used in a role where they get him some unique looking screens, or maybe they'll line him up in the backfield. Because remember, they did something like that in the Super Bowl with Scotty Miller, and it didn't work. It was like a 5-yard loss. But that's not really Scotty's MO. We know what Scotty's going to do. He has an established role on this team to be the deep threat for the Bucs. But I think Darden brings another dynamic to this offense that's already extremely talented, but he can do a little different thing here and there that the Bucs offense hasn't seen yet.
Well, and you know what, though, Matt, I think we've probably, I don't want to say we, but we might be getting too excited about a guy that may not even see the field or dress at times. I mean, I think he makes the football team, and if he wins the kick return battle, then of course he's going to dress every game. But as far as being in specific offensive packages, who are you going to sit down for Darden? I mean, are you going to take Mike Evans off the field, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller? I mean, Tyler Johnson's going to be fighting for reps this year. I think it's going to be tough for him to even see the field from an offensive standpoint. I think he does end up eventually winning the kick return duty. But again, that's all going to be determined in how he does in training camp and certainly preseason. But I mean, let's remember, this guy was a day 3 pick. I mean, this wasn't a first or a second round guy for a reason. And, I don't want us to pump up Darden too much, to be honest with you, but he is an intriguing guy to watch. But his time will come down the road. I don't think we should be expecting a whole lot offensively from Jaelon Darden this year.
I meant more towards like, if a player is out and he has to step into a larger role, or there may be some, and there may be, and I wasn't really throwing that towards you, just myself and really all the Pewter Report staff and the readers and the listeners as I read the comments. It's a lot about Darden here. We can talk about Darden, but let's not forget about the Mike Evans and the Chris Godwins and the Antonio Browns of the world that are the established, proven players in the NFL. And we're sitting there spending a lot of time talking about a kid that, probably sees the ball, 4 or 5 times on kick returns a game. And that may be it. He may get a couple touches. They may create some different packages for him. But again, his time is down the road, in my opinion. Long lost Glazer. This guy's always giving me stuff. Mark's 1996 picture with Tom McEwen. By the way, I have a new column up today. It's a Throwback Thursday. I haven't done one of those in a while, but always use a photo of myself and Tom McEwen in that. It has a real Chris Farley, O'Doyle family from Billy Madison vibe. Could have been a mid-90s extra in any comedy movie. I find that extremely offensive, long lost Glazer. No, I don't. That's true. I was very Farley-esque back in the 90s. And R.I.P. to Chris Farley. He was a good guy. And I think when did Farley die? Like 97, something like that. So anyway, anyway, that's my but if people get a chance to check it out, what I wrote in this week's column, Matt, was just some of my memorable things. And I did that because last week in the Hook column, I do a little section at the end called Cannon Blast, just some little blurbs and stuff. And in that, I put my least 5 favorite players to cover as a reporter over the last 11 years. Well, this time I went back through the last 25 years where I've covered this team on and off. Now, Scott's done it full time for 25 years. I've just done it on and off. I worked part-time for Pewter Report, which was Buccaneer Magazine back in the day. And then I had about
I don't know, 10, 12 year stint where I didn't do anything. And then the last 11 years, I've been back full time. But in this week, I talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly that I've seen. And I'll let people read it. We won't really dig into it too much if people want to read it. As I mentioned, I'll be leaving on vacation tomorrow. I tried to come up with something all day yesterday, some brilliant Pulitzer Prize winning analytical, earth shattering news piece, Matt. Nope, just wasn't there. So I had to go back to a fallback, just the old guy talking about the old days. Back in my day, I remember when Leroy Selman roamed the field, which I do, which is kind of sad. But anyway, long lost Glazer, thanks for the rip there. I don't know if that's a rip. I'm a big Chris Farley fan. Look, I mean, you know,
who doesn't love Chris Farley? Tommy Boy, great
Tommy
movie.
Boy, that's one of the best ever. I mean, his days on Saturday Night Live were just absolutely brilliant. Anyway, we're not going to go terribly long on this podcast, but we do want to talk about one of our good sponsors that will go long for you, Matt. I don't know if that makes any sense. Briar Greaves Insurance. Briar Greaves has been around for over 30 years. That's a long time, in case you didn't notice that. Briar Greaves has been around for 30 years. They're Buccaneer fans, but they are doing something right. You don't stay in business, Matt, for 30 years if you're not doing something right. And what I love about Briar Greaves is the personal service and attention to detail that you get from the agency. Again, you're not just calling an 800 number, not having any idea where you're going to be routed to. When you call 813-876-4166, it's going to go to Henderson Boulevard or Avenue in Tampa. You're going to talk to somebody in the office, maybe Diana, maybe Sam, maybe Briar himself. Ask for one of those three, and you're going to get excellent customer service. Myself, Scott Reynolds, we're both customers. Matt, we got to get you on the train. I'm sure you need some renter's insurance. I mean, I know you live in a fancy South Tampa Hyde Park, complex, which you probably don't need any renter's insurance for. But if you do, Briar Greaves is the place to go. Not just for homeowners or renters insurance, but for your automobile needs. All of us drive a vehicle. Well, most of us, if you don't have a DUI and don't have your license revoked. But if you're like the normal people listening to this podcast, you drive a vehicle. You need car insurance. Let them save you some money. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. It's only going to take about 10, 15 minutes to find out, though. But if you could put $300 in your pocket a year or even more, wouldn't you do that? Isn't that worth 15 minutes of your time? Give Briar a call or a crawl, 813-876-4166, 813-876-4166. Our good friends, Briar Greaves. We've got a lot of comments coming in. I promise we'll get to some of these. One of them that we had up just a second ago. How did Evans do? You wrote about it again in the practice report that people can check out on pewterreport.com. Bruce Arians said Mike Evans looked outstanding and to be in the best shape that he's been in since Bruce has been here for this time of year. That's good. I mean, Mike, I was joking with you that, during the, after Mike runs a long route, he taps his helmet and comes off the field. And I jokingly said, he's the least cardiovascular, 3% body fat guy, world-class athlete in the world. I don't know if that's true. That's not fair to say that. I was just joking when I said that. But Bruce talked about his being in shape this year. Bruce also talked about some guys that weren't in as good a shape as that he liked. But let's talk about Mike Evans first. Just a tremendous day today. I mean, it's hard to imagine this guy's going into his 8th season now. And Matt, I don't think he's slowing down. I mean, we haven't seen any sign of Mike Evans slowing down at all. Now, he had some injury situations last year, but he still battled and got that 1,000 yards for the 7th straight season to break Randy Moss's record, or Randy Moss's record. And I don't see any reason other than injury that Mike Evans doesn't make it 8 straight years with 1,000 yards, particularly with what we saw from these 3 days of minicamp.
Yeah, and you see with Evans how great of a player he is when he's fully healthy. And he's still putting up numbers knowing that he's got nagging injuries and really bad injuries. Remember, he got hurt the last game of the season. We didn't even know if he was going to play in that wild card round.
Exactly.
And then he went out and I think he got close to 100 yards or over 100 yards and, was the top target and just played a great game. But as far as minicamp goes, Tom Brady was throwing the ball all over the place. He was sharing the wealth. He threw 5 touchdown passes to 5 different receivers. That's what I was trying to say. But even with that, Evans was still his top guy. Evans was the guy that he was throwing the most to. He had multiple touchdowns. There was one that was great. It was over in the left corner of the end zone. And you could see right as Mike broke, Brady was going right to him. they just have this chemistry already just from one season. They know Brady knows where Mike is going to be at all times, and Mike knows when to turn his head around. And it was just like poetry in motion. You know, it was so fluid. He just caught it easily. The defender didn't even have a chance because Brady put it in the right spot. And it's no surprise that Mike led the team in touchdowns last year with 13 touchdowns. 12 of them came from Brady. There was one from Blaine Gabbert. I wanted to point that out because I put that in the article.
Yeah, you did put that in a note. Nice.
Yeah, and then another 2 in the postseason. But you just see why. Just the work ethic that both of them have is incredible. And then Mike made another great play too with Carlton Davis guarding him, the team's best cornerback.
Right.
They both ran down the sidelines on the right side of the field. About, I'd say, about like 15 to 20 yards down the field. It was a pretty long play. And Mike was able to, in like midair, adjust and catch the ball towards his outside shoulder. It was a great adjustment. Just one of those just typical vintage Mike Evans plays where he's just going to beat you one-on-one because he's a vertical player like that. And again, Carlton had really good coverage, and he was so mad after the play too, which unfortunate for Carlton, but you just love to see that competition and not willing to let up a yard, even though you're your teammates and you're all working together to win a Super Bowl. One last thing real quick too. Mike had a comment when he spoke to the media after I thought was interesting. He was talking about that the team is still pretty fresh because they just played in February, which normally I think that's the opposite. The longer you go, you're going to be tired and stuff. But the more I thought about it, he had an interesting point where, since they were playing in February, they didn't have that much time off. Sometimes when you have too much time off, you really like get out of rhythm and you kind of got to get back to square one and really get back to basics. These guys just needed a little bit time off to heal from their injuries and recover and take a little time off, but they were still, for the most part, in game shape and ready to go. And I think that's what you've seen with these 3 practices, that it's been all go, 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 because these guys have been ready.
Yeah. And I also think that what Mike said there makes some sense in the fact that it gave them an extra month of football that they wouldn't have had normally, right? I mean, they were already screwed because of COVID last year by missing the offseason and not having a preseason, a brand new quarterback stepping in, trying to learn a brand new offense. So that extra month of playoff football gave them time to get into a better chemistry and a better rhythm. And then, like you said, they haven't had the longest of gaps as they've had in years past. So, it's really scary. And again, I don't want to jinx this football team, Matt. I don't know if any team has been poised better to repeat a Super Bowl championship. And I've said it often, and I was actually going to ask Tom Brady about this yesterday, but they didn't get to my question. But it will be my first question when we get Brady, when training camp starts. But it will be my question is, Tom knows that as good as he was in 20 years, he only won back-to-back Super Bowls once. Now, he had an opportunity in 2 or 3 other years to do that. Giants cost him 2 of those opportunities to win back-to-backs. But my question to him is I want to know is this the most talented team that you had as far as returning? And I don't see, I don't really know that there's much of a question to that. Now, he may not say that because he doesn't want to come across like some of maybe his Patriots teams weren't as good. But this team is scary in the fact that they brought everybody back for the first time since I think it was 1979 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, bringing all starters back. I mean, we're talking in the modern age of football, it hasn't happened. I don't consider 79 the modern age of football. They were still running Franco Harris 43 times a game. So I'm talking about in a passing type NFL, a free agency world, where the league has made things more easily for teams to get good quick, things like that. The ability to bring back all 22 guys, to bring back depth pieces, and guys in their prime. This isn't a situation where, again, Tom Brady, okay, how do you say last year he wasn't in his prime? He won a Super Bowl. I mean, you don't do that by accident.
His second most touchdowns in his career.
I mean, it's hard to think of a 43-year-old man in his prime, but who knows? I mean, he's as good as he was last year in his prime. Does that continue? I don't know, but you're talking about an offensive line that's in their prime. You're talking about a defense that's in their prime. a good mix of young and old, and it balances out to, I think, the perfect recipe for this team being Super Bowl champions again. And again, doing it is hard. It's not easy. If it was, teams would do it all the time. The Patriots did it once. Before that, you got to go back to the 90s when the Broncos did it. So it's not a very easy task, but I think it's just mind-boggling when you think about how good this football team can be, and it can be better than last year. And last year was a dominating 31-9 victory against what I thought was the best team in the league, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mark, just think about it. Their entire secondary, at least their starters, are on rookie contracts. Rookie contracts.
Yeah.
And Devin White is still on a rookie contract, and Vita Vea is on the last year of his.
Right.
And I think it's so impressive, too. We've talked about ad nauseum about bringing back all 22 starters and a lot of key guys. But I think what is so impressive about that, too, is that they did it under a salary cap that was way less than anyone had projected it to be because of COVID and everything. So they did it on a shorter salary cap. Now, granted, it's going up next year, but they're going to be in a similar situation next year. But that's next year's problem. I think that's almost just as impressive, that they were dealing with much less money. Now, you could argue that, okay, well, every team has to deal with that, so therefore they weren't able to like shell out more money for other free agents in the past, where like you win a Super Bowl and someone really gets the bag. Yeah, there's a small part to that, but mostly I think everything they did, you may never see something like that again.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Flash Gordon says the tight ends alone are scary. If Howard stays healthy, Gronk looks flat out better than last year. These two tight ends alone can win the Super Bowl for the Bucs this year. Look, that was something we haven't even brought up. O.J. Howard was back. Finally, we saw O.J. Howard on the field. Now, he wasn't practicing, but he was running. He looks healthy. I follow O.J. on social media. He's been posting a lot of things this year. So I know that he's been recovering well from that Achilles injury. And it's usually a 10 to 12 month time frame. And to be 100%, depending on the severity of it. But we know he had to have surgery on it. So it was a severe injury, but looks like he's ahead of schedule, being out there on the field, being part of the team. It's a big year for O.J. Howard. We've talked about that numerous times on the podcast and written about it. What is O.J.'s role this year? That's the question. I mean, I think last year he was tight end one. Well, we know he was early on, and Gronk was, going to be used as kind of that blocking guy and an extra offensive tackle. And when OJ went down, Rob really, stood out and stepped up his game and turned out to be tight end one. But what about OJ Howard? What is his role on this football team? And we're going to assume he's going to stay healthy for 17 games. I'm just knocked on wood just in case. Not that I'm superstitious, but I hate it for OJ because 3 of his 4 years he's landed on IR. I mean, this is a big year. He's playing on his 5th year option, and he's at a crossroads, not necessarily in his NFL career, because if the Buccaneers were to decide to move on or decide they want to do something else at tight end, OJ Howard will play in this league for another 5 or 6 years. I don't think there's any question, as long as he doesn't suffer any significant. I mean, as long as he returns from that Achilles and he doesn't suffer any other significant injury, he's good enough to play for a long time left in this league. But where does he fit on this offense? What is his role going to be? I mean, I would hate, Matt. You're a fantasy football guy. I'm not a big fantasy football guy. But if I'm drafting tight ends, I'm not drafting OJ Howard, not because I don't think he could be a potential number one. I just think the ball is going to be shared by too many receivers, including he and Gronk. And so I don't even know what he projects out. But anyway, your thoughts on OJ Howard being back, looking healthy, and what's his role going to be on this football team this year, in your opinion?
Yeah, it was great to see him running on the field today. It's super encouraging given the injury history that you were just talking about. You look back at last season, up until he got hurt, he was, put it this way, Cam Brayton never saw the field when OJ Howard was healthy.
That's true.
So I think in a situation like that for this year, has OJ earned the right to just be the number 1 and number 2 guy? I don't necessarily think so, because Cam Brayton did a good job. I think OJ will be given that number 1 or number 2 tight end opportunity. Now, the Bucs use both of their tight ends a lot, so it doesn't really matter if you're the number 1 or number 2. And I also think as well, Gronk was so valuable to them last year, but I don't think they can just bank on, okay, Gronk can play every single snap and he's going to play all 17 games this year. I think at some point Gronk's going to need a little, just a couple of reps off or plays off in a game. By the way,
let's not forget there's an extra game this year. I mean, they're going to have to kind of, I hate to save these guys, but there are a few guys, the older guys, Gronkowski, JPP, that maybe you don't play. I mean, if they're questionable, why put them out there, right?
Right.
Say they're questionable
or even
injury
just,
report.
Cut down their snaps by like 10 or something like that. I'm not saying completely get them out of the game. So I think for OJ, a lot of it's going to come down to how he looks in training camp. Does he look like the OJ Howard that we know and that we've been accustomed to? And if that's the case, I think they slide him right in there as the 1 or 2 tight end, depending on what the game plan is that week. I mean, he's so talented and so skilled, and he was doing pretty well in the small sample size we saw with him and Tom Brady. So I don't think it's out of the question that he can regain the production that he had.
Sorry, the dog's barking in the background, and I don't know what to do because this is live podcasting. Anyway, where did it go, Matt? Hang on, I had something I wanted to show you. I may have lost it here. Where is it?
Is it football related or?
Well, you know what? It's hair related, Matt. Here it is. I think I'm just going to trim my nose hairs for the rest of the podcast. What do you think? No? Probably.
I think everyone will instantly log off, but
numbers are dropping as we speak. But you know what that is, Matt? That's the nose and ear hair trimmer from our good friends at Manscaped. Guess what? Father's Day is coming up. You don't want to have a hairy dad, do you, Matt? Do we really want a hairy father? Maybe you will buy it for yourself if your wife or your kids don't want to buy it for you. But anyway, listen. Today's episode sponsored by our good friends at Manscaped. With Father's Day just around the corner, you probably need a gift for a hairy dad. Make your dad proud this year and get him and yourself the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. Well, that means there's 4 of these things that have come out. 4.0 and the Ultra Smooth package. You know what they say, like father, like son. That's kind of awkward. Anyway, you want dad to be trimmed up for mom. I don't know if you do or not. I don't really want to think about it. But listen, it's not the 1970s anymore. It's 2021. It's time to get with the program, Dad. We need to take care of our hygiene for our lady friends who would appreciate it. The brand new Lawnmower 4.0 and Ultra Smooth package is the perfect gift for you and for the dad in your life to complete your grooming game. And the best thing about it, Matt, is you can get not 1, not 5, not 10, not even 15, but 20% off Manscaped plus free shipping with the promo code PEWTER, PEWTER. All you got to do is go to manscaped.com, manscaped with a D.com. Use the promo code PEWTER, and you'll get 20% off and free shipping. I'm going to say it. I use the product. I have no nose hairs anymore, Matt. It's amazing. It tickles a little bit, but it kind of is that good tickle. You ever get those? When you get the back of your neck shaved, when you get a haircut, that feeling. That's kind of what this does in the nose or even in the air. And Matt, let me just tell you something. You're not old enough for this to happen. But the older you get, the less hair is on your head. When you start losing on your head, God, in his infinite wisdom and the cruel joke that he tends to play on us, has it growing in different places, including the ear. I was looking in the mirror the other day when I was shaving, and I thought I was missing whisker hairs. There's actually hairs coming out of the ear. Yeah, I know it's gross. That's what this does. Same thing with nose hairs. Our body will just start popping out brand new hairs. Go to Manscaped, free shipping, promo code PEWTER, manscaped.com, proud sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. How's your manscaping going, Matt?
Solid.
Yeah,
I think I do a pretty good job.
It took me a little while to get used to it. I'm an old guy, but it's a lot different. In the crop preserver and the and the ball tonic that we use, I don't have to bathe sometimes for 3 or 4 days. Just spray a little of that on there, and off I go. Just kidding.
The boxer briefs are great too. I'm a big fan of the Manscaped boxer briefs.
Yeah, those are nice. Very nice. And Russell Weeks is complaining that we're going too long on this commercial. Mark using the lawnmower, never mind, too much information. Yeah, listen, man, I'm trying to get with the program here. I don't want to be known as the old guy forever. So I'm trying to stay with the trends, but it is a good trend. And it would be a good gift for your dad. Just, you don't need to show him how to use it. He'll figure it out on his own. All right. Anything else we need to talk about, Matt? We've went about 40 minutes here. Let me look on our list of things that I had because I'm real professional. I can't remember. Go ahead. You've got some.
Just a few things I'll run through. Ross Cockrell had an interception again today. He also had one on Tuesday. I thought he's had a really good camp. One of the better defensive players that we've seen, and he's really pushing the envelope to get more playing time. He'll get special teams playing time, but as that as that slot corner that he played a little bit last year when SMB was struggling. So I thought Cockrell had a really good day. Grant Stewart, the rookie linebacker, had another interception, so that was something to look at. A really fun battle. I know before we talked about Mike Evans and Carlton Davis. A really great battle that I think is going to be awesome to watch in training camp. We saw a little bit today. It was Devin White guarding Giovanni Bernard.
Yeah.
So we're talking about speed versus speed. I think that's going to be a great matchup to watch. Devin White got the better of him today. The pass went to Bernard, and he cut in front and knocked it away. So right now it's 1-0 Devin White over Bernard, but to be continued with that. And then also Brady, the touchdowns, most of the people he threw them to, we know. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cam Brate, Leonard Fournette. But the other one was to Travis Johnson. And that's a trend we've been seeing where Brady really hit it off with Jaden Mickens the other day in minicamp. And today, Evans was his top guy, but he was also connecting a lot with Travis Johnson. And that was really fun to see because Johnson is a player that Jason Light was actually talking about months ago. He said he's really excited to see what Johnson can bring to this team. That was mostly it. And then Gabbert was kind of inconsistent again, but nothing really to worry about. Kyle Trask, again, I think in the goal line and red zone, he started out a little slow, a couple incompletions, but then he really started picking it up again. He threw a touchdown pass to Tanner Hudson and CJ Prosise and was getting better as it went. And that's another thing that Bruce Arians talked about in his post-practice. I was about to say his post-practice podcast, but it's not a podcast. It's just an interview.
Right.
And he was saying that the game is getting quicker for him, but he's keeping up with it too. So another great sign for Kyle Trask. And overall, just a great mini camp, I would say, over these 3 practices. A lot of competition.
And nobody got hurt. That's my big thing. Because I've seen it. I've seen it in mini camps, OTAs, different things. We've seen it across the league already this year, injuries and things like that. Anyway, this team is, again, as we mentioned earlier, poised to do some very, very special things. Now, if it pans out, who knows? Because injuries can derail things. Attitudes of players. Bruce did mention today, one thing that I really caught my attention was him mentioning there were some guys that weren't in as good a shape as he would have liked to have seen over these last 3 days. I don't want to chalk that up to complacency. I don't want to chalk it up to, well, we're the Super Bowl champions, things like that. And he wouldn't point out who they were specifically. But hopefully everybody takes this next 6 weeks and they get on board because, there are some guys in this team that haven't, there's a lot of guys in this team up until last year that had no idea what it took to win a Super Bowl or to get to the playoffs. Having Tom Brady around, having Rob Gronkowski, veteran guys, JPP, they're going to hold these guys accountable. So you want to be accountable not only to your coaching staff and to your fan base, but to your fellow players as well. So hopefully everybody comes into camp in as good a shape as they can. If not, Bruce Arians is going to get them in shape. He's already said it's going to be a hell of a training camp. So, and if the heat is any indication like it was today, it was a warm one. We were standing there for Bruce today. I was like, okay, this is Florida weather now. So anyway, I hope that everybody comes back in shape. And as we know, listen, guys that are out of shape, those are the guys that tend to get injured the most too as well during camps, with soft tissue injuries and things like that. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But this team is poised to do special things this year. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, Matt. I appreciate everybody listening. We had a lot of great comments and things like that. Just know that if we didn't put them up, we were reading them, and we appreciate the back and forth from you guys. We hope people will go to pewterreport.com, read Matt's practice report, read my Throwback Thursday column that I wrote today talking about the good, bad, and the downright ugly that I've seen covering this team over the last 25 years on and off, including the last 11 full time. Check that out if you will. Now, we'll be back next week. I will actually be on vacation, so it'll be John and Matt and some different guests that the guys will have next week. We won't have anything Buccaneer to be able to watch until training camp comes around July 24th when things get underway. Ring ceremony a couple days before that. I wonder if we're going to get invited to that, Matt. You think?
I was curious as for a media type of thing. I'm not sure.
I wonder if we'll get any rings ourselves, from media. Doing a great job. No, we're not going to get a $50,000 Super Bowl ring. That's okay. But it would be cool to go to the ceremony and kind of see the guys' reaction and things like that. But anyway, listen, just because there's nothing going on the field for the next 6 weeks doesn't mean Pewter Report's going to sleep. We're going to be pumping out terrific content with our weekly columns and things like that. Scott will have his Fab Five tomorrow. My column's up today. John had his briefing on Tuesday. Matt has the practice report up today. I think even was it yesterday or you did another one this week too? Did a really good job on those. We appreciate your hard work on those things. We're going to have a ton of great content. More importantly, though, but just as importantly, podcast doesn't stop. There'll be 4 per week from now until forever. Well, till the good Lord returns. But we're going to keep pumping out these podcasts. We want people to continue to watch. Make sure you go to pewterreport.com, check out the website. And one thing I do want to say, please patronize our sponsors because they're the ones that make all this happen. If you enjoy what we do, we will not be able to continue to do it without the sponsors at pewterreport.com. And if you have a business or you work for a business that may need some advertising, maybe you're coming out of the pandemic and your business could use a boost, pewterreport.com has terrific rates. Obviously, we have a huge reach, a very vast, wide audience, terrific demographics. Check us out. You can email myself, mark@pewterreport.com. You can email Matt. What's your email, Matt?
Matt@pewterreport.com.
You can email Scott. You can email John, whoever you like the most. Let us help you out and help us keep things going here at pewterreport.com. Anyway, for Scott, who's still on the injured reserve, praying in all seriousness for a return to health for him. For John Ledyard, who needed a day off. For Matt Matera, I'm Mark Hook saying we'll see you next week with another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
What up, Dad? Good luck in your golf tournament this weekend. Out.